It is an honor to introduce today's speaker, Douglas Wood. I had an opportunity to meet with Doug prior this morning, and also I've had an opportunity to read his book, and I'm really looking forward to his discussion. Doug is a distinguished attorney, accomplished author, and a leader who spent decades shaping the legal profession. For over 48 years, Doug pursued a career as an entertainment and media lawyer, including over 20 years in big law. He built an 8-figure practice and managed hundreds of lawyers before he walked away in 2024. He earned recognition as a Legal 500 Hall of Fame member for advertising and marketing law and was ranked in the top tier of virtually every lawyer ranking services. Doug is also a novelist, writing both fiction and nonfiction, and is currently working on a nonfiction novel called Deadly Bites, B-Y-T-E-S, which is scheduled to be published in 2025. Doug received a BA from the University of Rhode Island, a JD from Franklin Pierce Law Center, an LLM from NYU, and an honorary Doctor of Laws from the University of New Hampshire. Doug still consults for a select group of clients that keep him busy, but not too busy such that it interferes with his quest to break 100 in his golf game. He now lives in North Carolina with Carol Ann, his wife of over 50 years. Today, Doug will be sharing insights from his book, From Dawn to Dusk, How to Build a Multi-Million-Dollar Law Practice and Then Give It Away, which instills a lifetime of lessons on growing and sustaining a meaningful legal career. His journey speaks directly to our retreat's theme, building a lasting legacy for future generations, as he offers practical wisdom in leadership, client relationships, and long-term success in our profession. Whether you're just beginning to think about your legacy or you're already working to solidify it, Doug's perspective will leave you with invaluable takeaways. Please join me in welcoming Douglas Wood.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I really do enjoy these kinds of presentations, particularly when I have the full range of lawyers from first-year associates to folks who are more senior, like myself, and to talk a little bit about the process and my story, if you will, and what I write about in my latest book, From Dawn to Dusk. So we're going to go through a little process here today, and at the end I encourage any kind of questions, observations, or whatever. You can moan during the process if you'd like to. That's okay. It's not going to insult me. I've had that happen before. I once spoke at Microsoft, and I was warned before I spoke that here at Microsoft, if someone isn't getting something out of your speech, don't feel badly. They're allowed to get up and walk out. So I went into that speech petrified that people were going to start to walk out, and I wasn't going to know what to say. I was going to say, where are you going? What did I say? What's wrong? But nobody walked out. So if anybody wants to walk out now, go ahead. It's all right. I won't be too insulted by it. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today, if I can get this to work. Here we go. So I'm going to take your career in 2 parts. We're going to start off, we can start off. Got a point. Okay. Part 1 is what we call Dawn, and that's building your future. That's sort of, for about half the audience here. That's a 6-step plan I'll talk about in building a practice and how I build my practice over the years. Some little tips and tricks that I used over the years that I think you might find useful to you, hopefully. And then we'll talk about some business tools that I developed and I used over the years that, again, may help you in that dawn side of your career. Then we're going to go on to dusk. That's what I like to call embracing irrelevancy. Because sooner or later, every one of you will hit your use-by date. It is inevitable. It's either you're going to control your use-by date or somebody else is going to control your use-by date. It just has to happen sooner or later. So we're going to talk about that process and my process of going through the embracing of irrelevancy and how that might affect all of you. And when I talk about this, I'm not talking to the senior half of this room. I'm really talking to the first-year associate as well, because this is something that is inevitable for every one of you in this room. And the sooner you think about this and you see the process and you appreciate the more senior attorneys as they're transitioning out, the more you'll be successful in the years ahead when it becomes your time to transition out. So this is really for the full room. I'm going to talk a little bit about your STAR program, which I have to tell you is really innovative. You're one of the few firms I know that does anything to address the issue in a formal way of succession and transitioning. Most law firms don't address it at all, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to talk about the road ahead for those of you who are in the transition phase. That's really a lot about my most recent story, about what I recently went through and how I organized and how I looked at it. And then I'm going to talk in the end about leaving a legacy and why it's so important, the legacy you leave and the different kinds of legacies you can leave. So, as I said, your STAR program is really interesting. When I first decided that it was time for me to transition out my practice, I thought, well, this has got to be something that smart lawyers have figured out already. Well, I don't have to figure it out. So I'll just reach out to the consultants that are out there, and I'll reach out to other law firms, and they'll tell me how to do it. And this is all I got, was the provision in my partnership agreement at Reed Smith. Because at the time, when I was 68, I decided I would run for global managing partner. I was encouraged to do it. I had run the offices, and I had done all sorts of other things, so my ego as a lawyer, naturally I could run the world. So therefore I decided I was going to run Reed Smith. So as I'm looking through the voting process in the partnership agreement, and I noticed this provision that says at the end of the year you turn 70, you are automatically de-equitized. And I was turning 70 in 2 years. The term of global managing partner was 3 years, so I could not run. So it hit me. Why are these people, what is this provision for? I mean, I'm still running hard. I'm still producing millions and millions of dollars of business, and they're telling me that they're going to de-equitize me. I'm no longer going to have a piece of the profits. I'm going to go to some other category, like they're showing me the door. I thought of Judge Dredd. I don't know if you ever saw that horrible movie, Judge Dredd. But it's a movie where when the judges get to a senior status, they open the door, they put them out into the cursed earth, they call it, and they have them go out to the wilderness and vanish. I felt like, wow, this was this Judge Dredd. I thought I was a Reed Smith. I'm apparently a Judge Dredd, and I'm going to be just shown the door. So I said, well, what programs do we have? None. I reached out, I couldn't find any. I went to the banks, I went to the consultants. Nobody really had any programs. So your STAR program is really innovative. And I hope you guys all embrace it and keep at it, because it's something that is really lacking in our profession out there, programs like that. Now, a lot of what I say today, you're going to probably sit there and say, I've heard that before. Is this guy going to say anything original, or is this going to be the same stuff I've been hearing for years? And that's okay if that's the conclusion. There's a business writer named Harvey Mackay. If you ever want to read some really good business books, Harvey Mackay is a great writer. And he talks about when he goes to events like this or elsewhere, that he tries to draw out three things in the end of the day. He realizes that he's going to hear a lot of what he's heard before. And there it is again, I've heard that before. The question Harvey would say to you then is, okay, you've heard it before, but have you done anything with it? Have you actually executed on those ideas you've heard before, or have they gone in one ear and out the other? The second thing he would tell you is, every single occasion you go to something, you might get one or two nuggets you hadn't heard before, that were new, that you hadn't seen or thought of. What are you going to do to execute on those? And lastly, he said, and this is the one that's the most important in his view, is when you're sitting there and the speaker says something to you and you go, God, I should have known that. It's what he calls the blinding glimpse of the obvious. It's out there in front of you, but you just didn't see it. And when it really hurts, when the blinding glimpse of the obvious really hurts in the practice of law, is when you lose an RFP because the other guy saw the thing that was obvious right in front of you that the client needed that you didn't see. So in the course of a process, when you go to these things and you got some guy up here speaking, walking around saying the things you've already heard of, try to pick up a little nugget there or here. And you might actually get some value out of this next half an hour or so. So let's talk about the beginning. So you young associates out there, you really want to take attention here, because your job of building a practice and building your business started the first day you joined the firm. If you think that the main thing you need to do is bill hours, you're missing the boat completely. You need to also hone your skills on how to deal with clients, how to build clients, how to look beyond the billable hour and figure out what you're going to do with your future. So, it's time, like I like to say, it's time for a fresh start with a written plan, I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand here who has a written plan, because there would be very, very few hands that would be raised. And that's an advantage to those who would raise their hands, because the vast majority of your competitors don't have written plans. And if any of you have an MBA and have gone to business school, you know that those business schools tell you that if you want to succeed, you have to have a written plan. Lawyers don't think of written plans. They don't think like business people. Now, they do it every day when they're planning how to negotiate a contract or they're planning how to try a case. They write it all down. They got their strategies down. They got what the witnesses are going to say. They know what the client wants in the contract. You do business plans every single day. You just don't do them for yourself. And what I'm trying to suggest to you today is that it's time for you to start fresh with your own written business plan. This excerpt from the Harvard Business Review is a really interesting observation that I think really applies to lawyers. We're some of the smartest people there are. And I'm not egotistical, but next to surgeons who go into your brain and cut it open, we're really smart people. But we're really horrible at planning, personal planning. We're just horrible. And Elizabeth here makes that point. So I'm going to give you a 6-step plan that I used. And it's follows the KISS symbol, keep it simple, stupid, because there are a lot more complicated ways of doing business planning than I'm going to talk about. But they're all variations of the same thing that's been around, it's old as dirt, these concepts. Now, others, in order to justify the existence of very fancy business schools, they take these basic principles and they turn them into quadrants and pie charts and graphs and all sorts of things, or points of this and whatever it is, that no one can understand. So I'm going to keep this really simple. I'm not going to say stupid, but I'm going to say I'm going to keep it simple. This is the way I did it and the way I suggest you can do it. So you start with what's known as a SWOT plan. Your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That was developed at Stanford by this very interesting gentleman, Albert Humphrey. He developed it in the 60s, the 1960s. And back in those days, this SWOT plan was considered one of the major breakthroughs in business planning. It was all of a sudden the epiphany happened and the SWOT plan was invented. It had nothing to do with the police, which when I first heard about the SWOT plan, I was going, what am I going to get dressed up and get a machine gun? I'm going to run into a client. What? I don't know what this is. Well, I misspelled it, and this is actually, no, not an A. But he developed this at Stanford, and it is taught in almost every business school today, and has been for decades. So it starts with an analysis of your strengths. What is it about you that gives you an advantage? For lawyers, we tend to be very easy at making a list of our strengths. We can't help ourselves. If we're given enough time, the strengths would be 10 pages long. Because, how can we not have strengths? We labored through law school for so many years and did all this effort and everything else, and so we got to be great. So we list our strengths. Well, I suggest to you, when you do your SWOT analysis, try to keep them to about 10, 15. It's going to be hard because you're going to want to go more. And so, but try to cull it down to 10 to 15 because that works in this exercise. Now, this is the one that's the hardest. Is the weaknesses. You really don't think you have any. If you do, you're going to say, well, maybe I don't like networking a lot, or maybe I don't, do whatever it is you don't do. If you really want to be honest with yourself on a SWOT analysis, you really have to be introspective, and you have to really be honest with yourself. I'm not asking you to publish your SWOT analysis. It's a very personal thing, and we'll see what you do with it in a few moments. But when it comes to weaknesses, I often advise the folks I talk to about this to talk to their colleagues, talk to others, ask them, what do you see what do you think my weaknesses are? And you got to have a pretty thick skin because you want to go to very honest people. Because if you don't get an honest assessment of your weaknesses, then don't bother to even do this exercise. Because the weaknesses is something we're going to work on a lot. Then there's opportunities. And then, opportunities I find most lawyers will say, yeah, I've got a real great opportunity in this particular category. This client's developing well. I might, look at this new technology, whatever it is. And AI is one of those new opportunities that we hear about. Yeah. My response to that is, okay, great, AI is a new, but how are you going to drill down on that opportunity to make a practical application of it with respect to your business plan? Don't just tell me that there's opportunities in AI. Tell me what the opportunity in AI is for your client base, for your prospects, for the people that you really want to work with in that category. Because lots of superficial things are out there that are opportunities. You've got to drill down if you're going to make this SWOT analysis legitimate. The more detail, the better. Then there's threats. Threats are things that are outside your control. The economy, another pandemic, things that are not out there. But if you don't identify them and find a way to identify them in your SWOT analysis, you will not be prepared to address them and deal with them when they happen. So you need to be honest with yourself again. What are these things that are outside my control? AI is a threat. It's both an opportunity and a threat. How is it a threat for your practice? Are you going to be replaced by a robot that's going to write out the trust and estates plans for everybody? Are you going to be replaced by that robot in California that tries traffic violations. There is a robot in California that tries traffic violations, and it's got a better percentage win than actual lawyers do. So what are you going to do? What are those threats, and how do they apply to you? That's really important. Okay, so now you've done an analysis of yourself. You really know who you are and who you are not. And now what are you going to do with it? The first thing you do is you're going to set your goals. The goals are what you want to accomplish to make yourself a better lawyer and a better producer. That's what your goals should be. And don't go overboard with things that are, another long list of 10, 15 goals. On a yearly basis, try to keep your goals to 5 or 6 that are really honed in on what you think you can accomplish in that given year. So it's digestible and it's possible to do. Don't get too crazy. Here's a suggestion that sometimes rankles some folks. Billable hours, working attorney receipts, utilization rates. Forgive me for the previous speaker. He probably hates me after I say this. But billable hours, working attorney receipts, utilization rates, all that stuff, they are goals set for you by others. They are not your goals. Now, they're important, and you should achieve them. You should strive to get to those goals, because if you don't, you probably won't have a job. But they're not goals that are going to get you growth that you want to have in business development. If you reach every single one of those goals, and you do it every year, year in, year out, 20 years in a row, at 20 years in a row, you're going to be reasonably compensated, but you're not going to be at the top of the pile, even close to it. So, yeah, pay attention to those, but those are not the goals I'm talking about when you're doing your SWOT analysis and the plans that I'm suggesting. They need to be, my fingers here don't work. They need, again, this seems like the blinding list of the obvious here. Your personal goals should be a combination of what is attainable and what is a reasonable stretch, not a huge stretch. The reason I combine those two is you want to set up some goals that you know you're going to achieve even if you're in your sleep, because it's going to make you feel good. It's going to give you the motivation to go on and maybe make those goals and achieve those goals that are more difficult and more of a stretch. And never set yourself a goal that, if you set a goal that I want to triple my business in 2026, well, that's stupid. Unless you inherit something from another lawyer that's leaving the firm that has that kind of business, you're not going to achieve that goal, so don't bother to put it down. But give yourself some bit of a stretch. Right? So now you've gone through your SWOT analysis, again, who you are and who you aren't. You've established 6 or 7 goals that you want to achieve that are stretches, that are beyond the billable hours, beyond the criteria that the firm uses to assess your performance in a given year. And now you want to go to the next step, the most important step in this process. And if you don't undertake this step with great detail, then you're not going to succeed. Before I get to that next step, I want to again stress that this is all in writing. This is not something that you just sort of have in your mind that you don't write down. And I won't go into all of the physiological and the psychological things that happen to your brain when you write something down and you see it. There's a whole bunch of study on that that's been done in a business context as well. But it's got to be in writing. It's got to be written down. And the most important things that you need to write down are your tactics. The specific tactics you're going to take to achieve those 6 or 7 goals that you've set yourself for the year. They're the what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, who you need to help you do it, and why it supports your goals. So who, what, where, why, and how. All right. Every tactic has to address those criteria. And the more tactics or tasks that you have associated with a goal, the more likely it is that you'll achieve that goal. That's not rocket science. It makes sense. If 2 people have the same goal, and this person has 2 tactics to achieve that goal that they're going to do during a year, and the other person has 15, who's going to win? I guarantee you it's the one with the 15. When I was really into my business planning, and I would have written business plans on a given year, they would be sometimes 60 pages long. It would go with my SWOT, my goals, my tactics, the when, where, and how. I knew things in January that I was going to do in December with specific clients or prospects of what I wanted to do. I had my year mapped out. And my assistant, who was the most important person in my life, Nancy, would be a bull over that business plan. She worked on it with me. And she would put it in my calendar. She would schedule me. She'd make sure I achieved those goals. And we would visit that business plan at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, because it would be adjusted, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I cannot stress how important it is to put down as many tactics as you think you can achieve for that particular goal. And again, this is business 101 if you go to business school. This is what they'll tell you. It's great to have your SWOT analysis. It's wonderful to have goals. But without tactics, you're not going to win. You got to have tactics. The other 3 steps are important, and I'm not going to go into great depth with them, but these are the last 3 steps in the 6-step plan. If you do the first 3, you got a 50% chance of succeeding. You do these, you got a 100% chance of succeeding. Create a schedule to review and update the plan. Not necessarily update your goals, but often just update your tactics. The goal is, is the old adage about, a ship in the sea is very difficult to turn it quickly, but tactically they can do some things that'll prevent it from hitting things or whatever it is. They're small steps. They're little things. They're not necessarily telling you to change your goal. Sometimes you have to abandon a goal because something happens. But try to stay true to your goals, and when you do the adjustments in the review, change your tactics. Second is that over the year, this is the who. Over the year, constantly build on your network. The more who's you know, the more successful you will be because the more people who know you. And who learn to respect you, and to learn about what you do, and how you care, and your DNA. When I last looked at my contacts, my Outlook contacts, I had over 4,000. Now, they're probably half dead. I don't know. But whatever the number of living people that were in that 4,000 base, there were a lot of people. And I found ways to stay in touch with them and whatever, or find out whether they're dead or not. But this building the contacts, the network, that helps you achieve your goals. That's the who. Who is going to help you? Don't try to do this alone. All these goals you've got to, whoops, first person walking out. Damn. So building that network of who's will also help you achieve all those tactics. So tactically, again, when you go in that tactic, who are you going to do? Who are you going to use to help you get that, achieve that? Then at the year end, you grade yourself. I used to give myself, grades of pass, fail in the beginning. Then I got more granular and gave myself A, B's, C's, and F's. And I kind of didn't like that one because I didn't like to see F's, because I had F's, where I didn't achieve a tactic, I didn't achieve a goal. But you have to grade yourself. You have to do it every year, and then you have to start it all over again with a new SWOT analysis, a new set of goals, a new set of tactics. I heard a speaker one day analogize this to, you go to your dentist twice a year to get check out your teeth. If you never brushed your teeth and you went to your dentist 2 times a year, your teeth would be falling out when you got there. It wasn't going to the dentist 2 times a year that gave you healthy teeth. It was brushing your teeth every single day for 2 minutes. That's what gave you healthy teeth, not going to the dentist. So, coming to this retreat is great. And coming to the other retreat you have is great. But if that's all you do, come to this retreat and hear some nice ideas and get some motivation, whatever it is, you're going to have rotten teeth. You've got to go back and start executing on these things every single day. And that's where the business planning comes in. That's where programming your brain comes in. Because if you write it down and you vigorously follow it and you revisit it and you look at it, you are literally programming your brain. It's no different than when you go into the kitchen every morning and you see that to-do list on the refrigerator door that your significant other has been asking you to do for weeks. Why do you finally get it done? Psychologists will tell you, you finally get it done because your brain is looking at that damn thing every morning and it's saying, enough already. Go mow the lawn, go take out the dog, whatever it is. You get it done because your brain subconsciously is forcing you to do it. That's true in business planning. So the more you're looking at tactics, the more you visit your plan, the more successful you'll be. So, as Yogi said, without a plan, even the most brilliant businesses get lost. You need to have goals, create milestones, and have a strategy in place to set yourself up for success. Yogi Bear is known for a lot of dumb things he said, weird things he said. But he was also a very good business person. But not a lot of people know that. Very successful. And he had plans. He always had written plans. So you SWOT, your goals, your tactics, your schedule, you build your network, reflect, and do it over and over again. I did it for almost 45 years. And I will tell anybody that the reason I built an 8-figure practice and was the most highly compensated people at Reed Smith, made millions of dollars, not bragging, I made a lot of money, was because of my business plans. It had nothing to do with some innate ability I had or some inheritance from someplace else. It's because I planned year in, year out with like religion. And you do that and you get the Doug Wood guarantee of success. You can call me when you don't, because I'll be gone. But no, use that every day. So now you're successful, you got it going. What are maybe some tips and tricks I can teach you that I use that sort of help me succeed in my career? First of all, if you're not a brand, you're a commodity. And let's be honest, we're commodities. Lawyers are commodities. I don't care what you do, I can find another dozen or more lawyers who do the same thing just as well as you do. We're not all that unique in the world. So to make yourself something that is distinguished from the crowd is you've got to create a brand. You've got to be something different. A brand in marketing, for those of you who are in marketing here, is generally defined as a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that, taken together, account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another. How many of you buy Clorox bleach? Raise your hands. Buy Clorox bleach? There's zero reason to buy Clorox bleach over this store brand. It is identical in every single way. It's just got a Clorox name on it. But they have brand loyalty because they've created the brand of Clorox. There's an association the consumer has with Clorox. And we can go through all sorts of products that create that kind of identification with you, but in reality, they're no better than the generic. But people always flock to brands. Why? Because they have faith in them. They've given a message, memories, stories, relationships, or whatever it may be. So you ask yourself when you come to branding, well, who are you? What makes you memorable? Why are you different than every other lawyer? You got to think hard about that and come up with the reasons. The first place to go is what's on your firm or LinkedIn bio. That's kind of the beginning, nice first step. So I went to Barclay Damon, and I pulled up these 4 bios on your website. Now, I kept the names out to protect the innocent or guilty, as the case may be, but you could probably plug in any lawyer's name at any law firm with these descriptions. There is nothing, these are what? These are commodities. So I read that, and that's my reaction. Really, I mean, it's, yeah, great, you do that. I know, I didn't come to you to look at your biography to learn what you do as a basic lawyer. I'm there because I know that. Tell me something about yourself that's different. And this is egotistical, but my bio at Reed Smith when I was there began with a member of the Legal 500 Hall of Fame in advertising marketing law. Doug is also ranked in the top tier of virtually every. Does that sound like a commodity to you? As a novelist, I know that if I'm going to capture a reader, I've got to capture them in the first sentence or paragraph. Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. You want to read on. What does that mean? So you have to give them a reason to want to read on in your bio. And it's not what you saw before. So your first assignment from today is to go home and look at your bios on LinkedIn and at the firm and figure out a way to start with something that's going to grab them. And then put all the other stuff in there. You got to have it all in there. But grab the readers so that they look at it. This is not your usual lawyer. This is somebody who's a little different. And I want to get to know.
Yeah.
Outlook. We all use it. I assume that's the firm's common contact program, but there are others. There's a field in Outlook you can type whatever you want in. It's the notes section. If you open up your Outlooks, and this is your second assignment, open up your Outlooks and just randomly open a bunch of them and see how much information you have in that notes section. Chances are you've got nothing. Chances are you just have the name and address and the phone numbers. That's where you put all the personal information you learn about a particular contact. What their significant other's name is. Do they have kids? What are their sports interests? Where are they from? Where do they go to school? What are their concerns? What are their issues? You put that all in there, and you start to learn a lot more about them, because here's the thing. Why do you like somebody? You like somebody in large parts because you think they like you. That's why you like to be around people that like you, right? And the more they show an interest in your personal life, the more they're going to think you like them. And the more they're going to want to like you, and the more business you're going to get. So when you meet a client, in a reception or whatever, and you know that their child's going to Fordham, or they're up, something's happened in their lives or whatever it is, and you start a conversation with that, as opposed to, so how's your business? I heard you had a bad time. I can save you. It's a whole different world. If you start it off with a personal message to them that gets them to think, whether you do or not, gets them to think that you like them and care about them, you will get more business. It's that simple. But how many of you actually do that? How many of you actually put that information in there? Because you don't put it down, you're not going to remember it. It's simple. Every time you open it up, just put it down. Put it down. When you got them on the phone, bring it up. Bring up something personal, and it'll make a big difference with that. LinkedIn. We all love LinkedIn. We're all told, got to get on LinkedIn, got to get on LinkedIn. I agree. It's a great platform. Unfortunately, it's been co-opted by a bunch of garbage, but there's a lot of good stuff on LinkedIn, a lot of good reasons to go there. But please do not click the like button. You're hurting the environment by wasting a bunch of carbon footprint stuff that's not going to get anything. It's a waste of time. Don't do it. Instead, get into the conversation. Post a comment. And better yet, post a sub-comment. If you do that enough and you do that consistently, sooner or later you'll have some offline conversations with people. Because you're showing them that you identify with it. You identify with the person who posted it. You identify with the people who below the posting. If you got a lot of guts, you post a contrary thing on there, that you have a different viewpoint, and see if you can get a conversation going on that. But don't waste your time on LinkedIn with pressing that stupid finger button, whatever it is. Get in the conversation and you'll find that you'll get a lot more value out of LinkedIn. I don't know how many of you do that. You're very busy, don't want to post a comment. There's 300 comments already. Why bother? Trust me. You do it consistently, you'll get responses. Personal note cards. How many people write personal note cards nowadays? Raise your hands. You know how people appreciate that. Because they don't get that. You have to break through the clutter. Someone gets a promotion, someone has something happen that's wonderful in their lives, or they've done something well for you. Their first inclination is, drop them an email. Well, that's along with the other 500 people who dropped them an email. And it's not even likely to get read. But when you send somebody a personal note card, that mine has a flying pig on it, I can explain that at another time. But when you send them a personal card, they remember that. They remember you. Or is it telling them that you care for them, you care about them? And they're going to be more comfortable wanting to do business with you if you show that you care about them. Holiday card clutter. I know I'm probably speaking blasphemy, but as far as I'm concerned, you're again hurting the environment when you send out e-cards at the holidays, because nobody really reads them. They get a ton of them, and I just find them a waste. Instead, what I did, I chose Thanksgiving because it's a universal holiday that nobody can really dislike for any reason. And I would do a note to my client base, thanking them for their friendship and business over the year. And I would insert, in the early days, I would insert CDs of artists I had seen because I was an entertainment lawyer that I thought were good. For 2 years, I produced my own CD with a son of one of our paralegals who was autistic but could sing wonderfully, so I produced these albums. Other years, I made contributions. These broke through the clutter like nothing else. If there's one thing I did on outreach to clients that are related to holidays, it was these Thanksgiving cards. So it's yours for free. Use it. Believe me, it'll make a difference. It'll impress the client that you're different, that you're a brand, you're doing something that the others don't do. Have any of you ever sent, how many of you here have sent Thanksgiving cards to clients? Do they work? Yeah. I mean, it's not that hard. And it's a lot better than these silly holiday cards that you see so often. Another rule, unless you're asked, don't talk about religion or politics, please. Because chances are, and I know we're passionate about it, we all have our very passionate views on these issues, and we should, and it's really important to have that. But chances are in business, if you start talking about that, you're going to lose 50% of your audience. You're going to alienate 50%. You don't want to alienate anybody. Because the side that doesn't agree with you in these is just as good a source for business as the ones that do. So be agnostic when it comes to that. Don't talk. If it's brought up, what I usually try to do when a prospect, when they would bring up politics or religion, I would make some sort of non-committal response and then try to steer the conversation to someplace else. I just didn't want to get into those discussions because they never come out well. Okay. Here's another one of the harsh realities that lawyers can't get around. You're just a salesperson. In the end of the day, you're selling 6-minute increments of time. That's what you do. And obviously you get great results and everything else, but you're a salesperson. So start reading sales books. Get out of the box of, get out of the box and start reading things that are not about lawyers. Don't even read my book. Read some other book. that talks about business principles in general and how great business people have succeeded. They're great. That's how you move forward. One of the books that I have on my desk and I look at all the time is Sun Tzu's The Art of War. I don't know how many of you have heard of this book. It's touted as being the oldest military strategy book in the world. Goes back millennia. But it's also regarded in many business schools as an excellent book for business planning and understanding strategies and tactics and how to do it. And it's a fun book to read. The one I have, that particular edition, has all sorts of illustrations and everything else. But there are teachings from there about being a winner and about a loser. And Sun Tzu says that he knew every battle he was going to win before he even started it, because he planned it, and the other side didn't plan it. Now think about that in the context of you building a business. If you're planning it, chances are the other guys aren't really. They're just winging it and hoping to get it. They immediately run to their marketing department and say, do an RFP. Okay, I got an opportunity to do an RFP. Was that part of their plan? No, they're just reacting. If you've got an outgoing, sort of progressive way you're going to do it, The Art of War, so that's a book you might want to get on your desk. So, you've now successfully built a multi-million-dollar practice. Congratulations. And you've built nice teams or whatever it is around you. Now it's time to say goodbye. It happens. It happened to me. So I had to say goodbye, and I had to figure out how I was going to do that. Would I do it on my terms, or would I do it on somebody else's terms? Because sooner or later, if you don't do it on your terms, you're going to do it on somebody else's terms. So we're going to take you through that process next. I love this. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. That's the embracing irrelevancy. You have to appreciate, you did a lot of good. You built a business if you were successful in doing that. You nurtured a lot of people. You've got a hell of a lot to be proud of. Few people can really say that in a truthful way. The legal profession, there's a lot of people who can say that because of the nature of our business, the nature that we are here to help others achieve their success. And we do it all the time for our clients. We are fantastic at this for clients. What my proposition to you is get fantastic at doing it for yourself. And don't look at it as something that you're going to cry over, but smile over because you've really achieved that success. So you need to learn that the time will come when you have to move on. And it can be any time during a career. You may want to move on because you just don't like being a lawyer anymore. You may want to move on because you're being disassociated with your clients a lot more, that they're turning to the peers as they grow in management. There could be a lot of reasons why you need to move on. And it's not here to just when you're 70 years old. Like Reed Smith told me when I was 70 years old, it was time to move on. It can happen at any age. So you need to understand and watch and see what that is that means you got to move on. One of my clients once told me, and I'm going to get into a little bit more, at some point, if you're really introspective and you ask yourself, am I adding value? I may be adding hours, I may be adding some revenue, but am I adding true value to the institution? If I'm not, then maybe that moving on is important. So if you still say to an associate, did the fax come in? You're still talking about faxes? It's probably time. And you may want to think about that. I had a client, his name was Eddie Phillips, and he introduced into the United States Belvedere and Chopin vodka. And he invested $1 million in 1996 to bring the product in. And it hit through the roof. It went through the roof. It was just printing cash. And in 2004, he sold it to LVMH for $700 million. And he and I were it's going to sound very romantic, it really wasn't, but he and I were walking along a street in Paris one evening, and we were out there doing the deal with LVMH. And I said, Eddie, why are you selling this company at a point when it's at the peak of its profits? It's making you millions and millions of dollars a year. And in response, he stopped and he looked at me and goes, because I'm not adding any value anymore. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve with this brand. I can hang on and continue making those millions of dollars, but that brand can be even many, many more millions of dollars if it's in the right hands of the right distributor and the right company. And he thought LVMH was the right company for that. So he said, I'm not adding value, so it's time for me to move on. And he moved on. And unfortunately, he died at a very young age, but his money was used to restore Jewish cemeteries all over Poland. He endowed the Holocaust Museum in Washington. He was a true philanthropist. He was one of the most wonderful people you'd ever want to meet. But he knew when it was time to move on. So, when you face that moment of when you're going to move on, remember that really is, it's just business. And that's what the realization that came to me when I looked at that provision of my contract agreement, my partnership agreement. I said, you know what? They're not really talking about me. They're not trying to screw me. They're talking about the bigger institution, the bigger idea of moving on and building building something that's sustainable and can grow and grow and grow. So in The Godfather, he made somebody an offer they couldn't refuse, right? And I didn't want to put any horse heads in anybody's bed. But I also didn't want to make an offer that they could refuse, and likewise, I didn't want them to make me an offer that I could refuse as well. So we need to find a way we could both find an offer that we both could agree with. And one of the things I like about your STAR program, because believe me, law firms don't generally have those things. They really don't. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we move along here. So it all comes to planning. Again, back to Yogi, my main man, Yogi, who said so many really good things. If you don't know where you were going, you'll end up someplace else. That's one of his great quips. And that's true if you don't know what you're going to do in transition. I don't know where you're going to end up. You're not going to end up in a good place. So you need to plan this out. Just the same SWOT analysis. When I went through my transition period, I literally did the same thing I had done so successfully for so many years. I did a SWOT analysis. What are my strengths in transitioning? My weaknesses, my opportunities, my threats. I did the same thing. Goals, tactics, the whole 9 yards. So you've got to map that success. And that's, again, the SWOT plan and the right, where, as Confucius said, when it is obvious that goals can't be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the tactics. So that's what you have to do. Because the goal of transitioning successfully a legal practice is going to have challenges that you didn't anticipate along the way. And rather than abandoning the transition, you change the tactics to get the transition done. And we'll talk about that in a second. Interesting, the STAR program says, what are your long-term goals and objectives? What steps are you taking to attain your goals? Goals, tactics. So you guys already have sort of the basics of that in that program. What are the goals? What are the tactics you're going to use to do that? Again, the more tactics, the better. So you next have to take the steps. And that, believe me, is really hard. Because if you're a very successful lawyer and you've built a big book of business and the reality comes that it's time for you to move on, taking those first steps is really, really hard. Because you're generally, if you're doing it at the right time, you're doing it at a time like Eddie Phillips, when the company was at the top of his game. Maybe you're at the top of your game. But that's when you have the power. That's when you have the ability to move on in a very productive way. So in the end, I've got to get better at this one of these days. This sounds like the cliche. It's everybody has a role, but everybody does. And where transition falls apart is where one of those concentric circles doesn't live up to its obligation in the process. Either the young people stop caring, the older people don't want to do it anymore, and the firm doesn't support them. And that model, I will tell you, fails in the vast majority of firms I've spoken to because they don't have a program. You guys have a program. I can't even begin to tell you how far ahead you are of what other law firms do, which is basically nothing. So this is the latest and greatest basketball player, right? He is amazing. But I love the way he has an attitude. So what, it's just a game. I got to go home. It's late. It's incredible to listen to this guy. But he's right. When everybody is sharing the ball, everybody's going to succeed. I know there's a lot of cliches here that I use. I love cliches. You know why I love cliches? Because they're true. Because as common as they are, and yeah, another cliche, if you think about them, they've evolved because they're really true. So I love cliches. You probably already figured that out. Okay? In your STAR program, it says, consider exploring voluntary origination sharing arrangements with more junior lawyers identified, et cetera, and list instances among your top 10 clients, whatever. Those are really important aspects of that program. When I ran my own law firm, I had a partner named Kenny who would religiously bring in $2 million a year I could count on him for $2 million a year, every year, year round. He busted his ass. He worked, I forget how many hours he worked. And I go to him one day and I say, Kenny, we compensate you well, but if you really want to be compensated even better, if you start delegating your worth and sharing it with others, that $2 million will be $3 million, $4 million. It'll get much bigger. You'll get a lot more money. He said, that's what I do. I don't like to do that. I'm not going to do that. He says, okay, fine, Kenny. Then you'll get compensated well until the day you leave. You take a partner who has $2 million of business, Joe, and the partner who has $2 million of business, Jane, and one takes the Kool-Aid and starts to delegate more and more and more. Jane, let's say she's the one who does it, is going to triple that practice in a matter of 5-10 years. It's guaranteed. The more people who are working for you, the more people you are sharing your practice with, the more money you will make. I used to track the number of attorneys that worked on my matters and my clients when I was at Reed Smith. In my best year ever, a lot of money. I had over 300 lawyers worked on my matters. Some for an hour, some for 1,000 hours. And I took the Kool-Aid then I said, wow, now I know the key to success in making a whole lot of money as a lawyer. Just delegate, be the laziest lawyer on earth, and have everybody else work their ass off for you. And if you talk to my partners, they'd say I did a pretty good damn job of that. Trust. This is hard when you're in transition, to trust the others. It's because you have such an emotional tie to your clients and to what your value is. To trust others to take it to the next step is really hard. But as Chekhov says, if you don't believe in people, life becomes impossible. So you've got to make that quantum leap at some point. You don't do it right away. I mean, it took me a while to really sort of get into the swing of things and saying, okay, I was kind of worried of this person, but I'm going to start to trust him, and we're going to talk, and we'll move it along. And then it ultimately did work. Loyalty is another one. This Neil must have been really great to go to a bar with. Fills the X's political graveyards. And in politics, it's probably very true. But loyalty, you'll see it change. There'll be moments when you are going to say, wow, I thought there was loyalty there and there isn't. Or, wow, this person is really bending over backwards to be loyal and to be part of this program. So that's the tactical side, right? You're not changing your goal of transitioning. You may change your tactics on who you're going to transition to as the process goes along. The STAR program sees that. The firm seeks to foster a sense of trust and loyalty among all lawyers, including those who are planning to slow down and eventually retire, and those who will help with it and be affected by the transition of the retirement of a lawyer. That's the trust and loyalty aspects within your STAR program that I encourage you to, I compliment you on even having it written down. Reed Smith had one paragraph in a partnership agreement, and that was a big law where they had plenty of money. They made billions of dollars a year. You'd think that they could have spent a couple of bucks on dealing with more senior. In fact, I marvel at law firms and how they help cohorts. And they do a marvelous job of it. Whether it's the disabled, the LGBTQ, the women in law, you name it, across every single cohort. Law firms do wonderful jobs, but there's one cohort they do nothing for, and the one cohort that everybody in this room, God willing, will eventually be a part of, and that's getting older. They don't do anything for it. They just think it's Judge Dredd time. Doug will go out the door and he'll go through the cursed earth and leave everything behind. So your STAR program really does address that, and that's terrific. So let's talk a little bit about that road ahead. And this is a lot of my story in my transition over the last 7 years that I transitioned my practice to others and what I experienced and what you'll experience. And again, this is just as much a message to the young lawyers in this room as it is to the older ones. Because the more you think about this younger in your career, the more you will be prepared for it when the time comes that you're going to be asked to transition, or for reasons beyond your control, you have to transition. I used to say to clients in business when I at one point represented a lot of ad agencies, people starting up ad agencies, and I would say to the person when they started up the ad agency, the first thing you want to think about is selling it. It's like when you buy a boat, the first thing you want to do is buy the boat and then sell it. Same kind of thing, right? Same concept. But think about that really early on. First is the external stress you're going to experience. That's the stress that you get from the law firm, from your clients, from your colleagues. they want you to move on because that's their reward, and that's a valid reward. It's important, but that's very stressful early on in transition process because it's kind of like when your last kid leaves the house and goes to college. You're staring at your spouse, and you're going, "Hey, what are we doing now?" It's kind of stressful here. I had a client one time tell me a partner tell me he was going to retire, and he said they're going to a retirement counselor to talk about retirement, he and his wife. And I said, wow, I didn't even know they existed. I was much younger then. So he came back a few weeks later, and in my office he was back, and I said, so Felix, you retired? He goes, no, I'm never retiring. And I said, well, what happened? He said, the first thing the retirement counselor said to the two of us was, look at each other. Is that the only face you want to see for the rest of your life? So I keep telling Carol Ann I love her face, but it's not the only face I'm going to see for the rest of my life. But the external stress is very real, and its onset is early on because the plan's been adopted, so now you got to move it along. Internal stress is really, really hard. That's what I talked about earlier about giving up something that you built that was your child. It's very hard to do that, and so you've got to learn to deal with that internal stress, and a lot of that is talking to people. Your friends, your significant others, your partners, talk. You talk through internal, any psychologist will tell you. I used to think that, I always find it funny that you go to a psychologist and the psychologist always says to you, I'm just here to listen to you, I'm just here to listen to you. And you say, well, you're going to give me a solution? They go, well, no, it's not my job. I'm just here to listen to you. I go, if I practiced law like this, I wouldn't have any clients. They came to me and go, all I'm going to do is listen to you. I'm not going to solve your problem. But talk solves problems when you talk about it. So internal stress is something you really got to talk about and do it as often as you can. Make it part of the program. Your attitude, positive attitude, you got to have a positive attitude. One of the books I used to have my associates read when they would come on board was Norman Vincent Peale's Power of Positive Thinking. There's some religious content in it. He was a preacher, but he talks about, in that book, how positive thinking achieves success far more than pessimistic thinking achieves success. You got to be positive in the worst possible circumstances. That's going to help you along. When you get down, you get a little depressed about the transition, try to stay positive. It'll help you get through it very easily. Humor. You got to laugh at this shit because, in a way, we're not all that important, really. Again, we're replaceable. Let's face it, it's real. Might as well have a good time at it. Might as well have a little humor in it. Enjoy yourself a little bit on it. Joke around a little bit. Be the butt of a joke occasionally. Do some nice, targeted jokes against others to make them uncomfortable. That's all fun. So keep your humor throughout the process. It's easy to lose it. Don't let it get lost. I love this quote from Sigmund Freud. I mean, when I first saw, when you say Sigmund Freud, here's the guy's intellectual beyond belief. This guy's got to have these deep thinking, and then really know how to. And maybe you're just surrounded by a bunch of jerks.
Yeah, good.
So if you identify someone as a jerk, the hell with them. Get rid of them. They're off your list. They're no longer tactical. So you'll see the jerks along the way. You'll definitely see the jerks. And remember what Sigmund Freud said. Just don't be depressed about it. You're just surrounded by jerks. You're okay. Disappointment is something that is inevitable in this process. People will disappoint you because they're not going to necessarily have your same work. I hear it all the time. And this is not meant to insult the younger attorneys here. I know you're hard workers and all that stuff, but you just don't work as hard as I did. No way. God forbid you're in on a Saturday. We were joking earlier with one of your partners, and Saturday was great for me because I didn't have to wear a suit.
Yeah.
So that's hard and can be disappointing that the people who are younger on your team may not be as energetic as you are about the whole process. You know why? Because they're busy. You're not the only thing in their life. There's a lot of other things they have to do, a lot of other things they have to achieve. So disappointment doesn't really belong here. You just have to nurture and get through those disappointments.
Totally.
Anger. I love this one too. Nobody being angry unless you're a psycho. Well, if you're a psycho, then fine. This is not a plan that's going to work for you. Don't be. It's so easy to be angry. You get pissed off. Somebody didn't meet a deadline. I tried to do this transition thing and it didn't work or whatever. Get angry. Anger is going to get you in transition nowhere. Maybe young people get some benefit out of being angry, I don't know. But as you get on in life, being angry is borderline psycho. So, don't bother with that. Diversions. This is so vitally important in transition. And my career working with lawyers, senior lawyers, and running law firms, the saddest thing I ever saw was the 78, 85-year-old lawyer who came in every day and sat at his desk and tried to be relevant, when eventually they became irrelevant because the clients didn't turn to him anymore. They had nothing else to do. They had nothing else to do. So in this process, if you haven't already figured out doing things that are diversions, figure out more. And I don't care how young you are, you ought to be thinking about diversions right now. I regret terribly that I didn't take up golf until I was 70. If I had taken it up when I was a young associate, I think I'd probably tripled my business because I'd been out on golf courses with a bunch of assholes who lie about their scores. And, whatever it is. And I would say, yes, sir, you hit a 4 on that. Not the 7 that I counted, you hit a 4. It's fine. They think I like them, whatever. So you got to get diversions. And again, from a tactical standpoint, when you're doing your analysis, you need to have tactics. I'm going to have diversions. Get them down. I don't care whether it's writing, whether it's doing volunteer work, whether it's taking up golf more, whether, God forbid, you take up pickleball, or whatever other things that are out there that you can do. Mentor. Right now, I'm mentoring at the UNCW, at the University of North Carolina. I mentor young students, kids in business school. It's a little weird because they're so naive. It's unbelievable, but it's fun. I do that, and as the intro said, I'm desperately trying to break 100, which I know I never will do, but it gives me plenty of time to go out and do that, and I write novels, and so I've got a lot of diversions in my life, which really helped in transition. If someone asks me, do I miss it? The truthful answer is no, I don't miss it. And I don't miss it in large part because I planned it, and I had diversions in the end, so I had an afterlife. Law was not all I lived for. There was a time when it was, for sure. But it certainly ended as I entered the period of transition. Respect, you earned it. And everybody in the room owes you the respect you're due when you transition your practice. Do not let that go by the boards. If someone does anything that you believe to be not to be respectful of you, you call them out. You don't let someone be disrespectful. Any more than you would allow a client to be disrespectful to one of your teammates or to you. So don't let them be disrespectful to you, because there'll be some of that stuff going on in the background that you're not going to be happy about. Oop. Okay, transparency. This is vitally important. As lawyers, we tend to not be transparent in many ways. We have a lot of knowledge we have to hold in, confidentiality, all sorts of reasons why we have to sort of be more, confined in what we talk about. But in transition, it's got to be transparent. You've got to have open conversations with everybody, with the colleagues, with the firm, everybody. It's got to be transparent for it to work. I have the do not do list. Everybody has a to-do list. I have a do not do list. Things that I'm just not going to do anymore. I'm not going to talk to people who I don't like. I'm not going to talk to jerks. I'm not going to watch the news more than an hour in a day. I'm not going to do work for more than an hour before I get up and walk around and do something else. I have my do not do list. So everybody's got the to-do list. Try it the other way around. And you'll find it's a lot more relaxing if you have things that you're just not going to do anymore because they really weren't giving you any reward when you were doing them. So make a do not do list. Support requires from everybody, and that's where the transparency comes back. Your friends, your family, your colleagues. You're going to need. This is the younger people, the middle level people. You need to give your senior partners a lot of support. They're giving something to you on a silver platter. Appreciate it, and give them the support that they are genuinely due. So let's talk about legacy real quick here. I love this quote. We all die. The goal isn't to live forever because we can't. The goal is to create something that will. That's what legacy is all about. 4 points I like to make in the beginning. Throughout this process of your transition, you got to stay professional. Don't make it personal. Try to stay professional. Any behavior you don't like, address it immediately and proactively. Adapt your tactics as necessary throughout the process. And focus on the bigger picture. Remember, That your legacy isn't defined, about by actions of a few, but by the whole handling of challenges with grace and resilience. That's what a legacy begins with. Do you mentor? Mentoring is not just sharing what you know, it's really bringing somebody along to be better than you. It's like the old adage, we want our children to do better than we did. That's what true legacy can create. You build a positive reputation. And every time you turn around, you want to make sure your reputation remains positive. So you don't get angry, you don't get bitter, you stay away from all of that, and your legacy will be much better. Know when to step away, we talked about that. Like I said, if you're still faxing documents in 2025, it's time for you to go.
Sure.
Plan your exit strategically. We talked about that, the SWOT analysis, your goals, your tactics. Do that so that your legacy is long-term and meaningful. Prioritize all the relationships in the process. You maintain your relations with clients, colleagues, staff, etc. But be kind particularly to your assistant because they know where the bodies are buried. That's probably your biggest ally. Because my assistant Nancy would come in and go, Doug, you better watch out for Stacy. I don't think you should be trusting her as much, and it's not really named, it's Stacy. I'm making that up because God forbid she really heard me say this. That you better watch out for her. You know what? Nancy was right. In the end of the day, Nancy was right. So, your colleague, your best resource is your admin, because the admins know everything. You know half of it. The admins know everything. Contribute beyond yourself. That's another thing about legacy. Get out there. Do things that are beyond what you would normally do internally. Adapt. We talked about that a little bit. It's a mindset. You always have to be ready to adapt to the changes, open to new ideas, different ways to do it. Here's one that I think is really important that I encourage every one of you to do. And that's to document your wisdom so others can see it. I wrote a memoir called Asshole Attorney a few years ago. And it's all about what I did in my career. And I had a really fun, crazy career. I wrote that in large part because I'm egotistical, and I thought I needed to do it, because I'm so impressive. But I really thought about it, and I did it because I want my kids, my grandchildren, my colleagues to know me when I'm gone. So that my grandchild may someday pick up Asshole Attorney if her parents allow her to read the title and say, hey, that's what Grandpa was. So if you want to just be totally selfish, you don't even have to publish it. You can self-publish if you want to. Write that out. Tell the story. Tell your story. It's first of all, it's a really great cathartic thing to do for yourself. But it's also important because you've got a lot to teach. You've got a lot to tell people for their futures. Celebrate other successes. Don't be selfish about that. Then always exit, on a high note. Exit with positivity, with whatever it's going to be. One of the things people say in transitioning, and I battled with this, was I in my heart of hearts, I believe that, these clients can't get along without me, that I'm the man. That they came to the party because of me, and they're always going to want me, and there's no way that this can succeed without me. Then I thought about that a little bit, and I said, if that was the way my predecessors thought, I wouldn't have had the practice I have. So you know what? They were all expendables, so am I. So I need to figure out how to make that work. And that's what someone said earlier about you begin a transition of your practice years and years ahead of the time you leave by exposing your team to your client and by telling your client outright, listen, I'm not leaving today, but I might be leaving in a few years and I want you to meet these folks and all that other kind of stuff. If you say that to a corporate client, they're not going to spin their head around. They're going to say, great, you have succession planning just like we do. Every corporation has succession planning. Most law firms don't. So it's not going to be something that's going to ring crazy to the client. They can actually appreciate the fact that you're doing that. That's how you exit on a high note. You hold on too long, you fail to plan, you neglect relationships, you resist change, you get your ego overhand, you tarnish early accomplishments. That's terrible when you see that happen. I've seen lawyers who have just had great accomplishments in the last few years of their practice. They just ruin them because they turn sour. Then you alienate your successors and you damage the organization itself. That is not a legacy that anybody wants to leave, but it's a legacy you can pretty easily leave if you don't think about it really hard and accept the fact that there comes a time when you need to transition. And hopefully say like I do, I don't miss it. because that's really what you want to be able to say in the end. So, I think Robert Frost said it best. In 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. And it goes on with or without you. So I suggest to you that if you figure out how to plan for it with the cooperation of your firm, which you already have with your STAR program, and the respect and dignity of the others in your firm, this journey is not hard. It's hard in the beginning, but it gets easier each day you move forward, as long as you've got that plan. So I like to talk instead of what I did, it was relevancy and progress. So I'm still relevant. I'm just not relevant to my clients anymore. But I'm relevant to others, and I found other ways to be relevant. And that's really what you need to do in this process to really feel good about yourself and the people you've left behind and really leave them a legacy that's going to be meaningful. So if you want to learn more, and this is sort of the sell pitch here for what it's worth, I launched this career of consulting with law firms 2 years ago. I think, I'm ending one career, I'll go on another career, and I'll just work with lawyers. Because when my wife said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Yeah, you've been with guys. I said, "No, it's a different kind of stuff. I'm going to just talk to them." So I have this website from dawn to dusk. I'll be doing podcasts next month. I'm starting podcasting, and I've got the book, and I've got blogs, and I've got all that stuff. So if you want to learn more about this process, I encourage you to just get on the mailing list. My publisher tells me there's a mailing list, so you think you could contact Doug there, whatever it is. And I don't know how to do any of this stuff. She does that all for me. And if you want to know more about my career, you can read Asshole Attorney. It won the Best Independent Press Award for Best Humor and Wit in some year that it was published. So it's fun to read. It's a funny read. So you probably might enjoy that. Middle of the night when you can't sleep. Amazon made us put the black line through asshole. They refused to list the book on Amazon unless I put the black line through asshole. So my publisher came up with a cool idea of putting, okay, we'll put it through asshole, and then we'll put it through something else there and change it to missteps. So it kind of flowed. That's artwork. And art direction is very good. And if you really can't get enough of me, you go to my author's website, and those are all the books I've written. And the top row are fiction. They're thrillers, like Clancy and Ludlum and those kinds of things. I'm not saying I'm in their league. I'm not. But if you want to do something that's really a lot of fun, write novels, and then you get to use people's names that you don't like and kill them. It's really cathartic. In fact, when I was at Reed Smith, we had our holiday party when I was writing a lot of these books, and we would raffle off the right to be a character in my next book, whatever it was, and all the money went to charity. We did it 3 years in a row, and every year when I said to the person who won the raffle, "What do you want to be? You want to be a hero, or do you want to be a villain?" Every one of them said they wanted to be a villain. And I said, "You understand, if you're a villain, I'm probably going to kill you, and probably in a really horrible way." "Yeah, the more horrible it is, the better." So maybe that's in lawyers. Lawyers are just, trained to be villains or whatever it is.
Good.
So thank you very much for today. It's been great. And if you have any questions, if there's time for questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer them. As they say, I'm here all day. I'm not going away. So if you want to take me aside and say, I know this guy named so-and-so, or this woman named so-and-so, when I know really it's you. But that's okay. We can use a third person if you like. And challenges you have, I'd love to talk to you about them and that kind of thing. So thank you again.